Okay. I hope everyone's having a great night. We are going to be recording this webinar. So if anybody was not able to join, it'll be posted on our website. So if at some point tonight you need to dip out, feel free to. We'll have this posted online. But we're so excited that you guys are here with us. We're going to go ahead and get started, and people can continue to join as they want. If we haven't met at Greek Preview, or from me spamming your inbox this summer, my name is Kylie. I work here in the Office of Student Life at the University of Oklahoma, and I serve as our Panhellenic advisor. So I get to work with our 11 awesome Panhellenic chapters, but I also part of my role is overseeing the Greek community. So I get to work with all 55 of our Greek organizations on campus, which is a super fun job. And we have some really awesome students. So I'm excited that you all are here tonight. This webinar is really geared towards parents, families, supporters. So really it's designed to help give you like some baseline knowledge about the process, about the membership experience. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I've got two of our student leaders on this call. Angelita Ochoa and Larson Russell are both here. So if you all have questions that could be answered in like a typing format, they will be monitoring the Q&A function in this webinar. So feel free to drop those questions in there and they can answer those questions. And if it feels like there's any that we might need to like talk more about towards the end, we can definitely do that. But like I said, we'll be posting this recording online. So even if you want to share it with your student, you're welcome to do that. But know that most of the content in this presentation is really going to be geared towards parents, families, and supporters, kind of about Panhellenic recruitment. So we're going to get started. I wanted to show just some faces and names. If you do need to come by the office for whatever reason during recruitment, these are some folks you might see. So Larson and Angelita. Oh gosh, I forgot to change Angelita's name. Angelita, I'm so sorry. Angelita is our current Panhellenic president. But you can kind of see some names and faces here. We've got a couple of staff members down below, myself, Alex Jackson, and Hannah Phillips. So if you need anything and come to the office, these are some folks you can look for. Again, I think it's nice to put a face to a name. So if you call and need something as well, it's probably one of us six that will be answering the phone. So if you need anything throughout the process, we are your friends. This is kind of our agenda for tonight. So we're going to talk about some Panhellenic membership information, just general what to expect in the process, some recruitment lingo that's good to know, a little bit about the process. We're going to go like real basic, just for folks who maybe don't know anything about this experience. And then we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into how selections work, how bid matching works, and give you some resources to support your students throughout the process. We know that parents and families, supporters, all of those folks play such an important role in this process. And we want to make sure that you have the tools to do that in the best way that you can. So we'll start just kind of with Panhellenic membership. This is actually would be happening after recruitment, but it felt like kind of good to start with. So this is just some general information I think that's helpful to know about the Panhellenic membership experience. If you came to Greek Preview, we talked about a lot of these things, but we always get questions about time commitment. What does the time commitment of joining a sorority look like? Typically, it's 1 to 2 hours per week. That's kind of like the required stuff, right? But sororities are like anything. You get out of it what you put into it kind of vibe applies to this. So, if you decide to do a committee or run for chapter leadership or something like that, obviously the time commitment is going to look a little bit different. But no, for that first, especially that first semester, that like 1 to 2 hour of required things, plus maybe, 2 more hours of more optional things, I think is something you and your student can expect from that time commitment piece. The academic data is something we always like to share. We're just really proud of this stat. 98% of Greek students retain through their entire first year into their second year of college. That is almost 10 percentage points higher than like the rest of the university. So know that if you're worried about your students' academics being impacted by their Greek experience, know that academic impact, especially for Panhellenic, is often a positive impact, less of a negative thing. And as you can see, our all Panhellenic GPA is a 3.48, as opposed to the all women's GPA, which is a 3.38. So again, Panhellenic women are doing great in the classroom. It's an expectation of membership. And so, for people like me, like I'm from a really small town, it gave me me structure and things that I needed in my academics to succeed. And we find that to be really true for a lot of students as well. And then kind of the last commitment piece of membership that I think is good to talk about, especially on the front end, is the financial commitment. Like a lot of clubs and organizations, there is a financial commitment to joining. And it's really important that you discuss that either with your student if she's going to be paying for her membership dues, or as a family to discuss what that looks like for you all. Something that I appreciate that the National Panhellenic Conference has all of our organizations do is a financial transparency report. So if you scan that QR code, you can see the one for this upcoming academic year. So that just gives you an expectation of what to look at. The numbers on that document are for an entire academic year. It's not like by semester. Most of our organizations bill monthly. So that's just something to kind of know. When it comes to membership dues, they are billed external from the university. So chapters have their own platforms and things that they do through their national organization of how they bill for those membership dues. The only kind of Greek specific thing that would be billed through the university is a Greek fee. So this is a $30 semesterly fee that helps support Greek programs and staffing. That happens, like it says, semesterly. So you can expect that on the student bill in October and in March annually. So just something to know. That Greek fee is only for active members on the roster. So if at any point, the student needs to study abroad or something like that and becomes not an active member, then they would not be charged that Greek fee. Okay, we're going to get into it. Formal recruitment is coming. It is so soon. So before we kind of talk about how the process works, I think it's good to know some terms. Like anything in college, I feel like we live in alphabet soup a little bit. So these are some terms that are good to know about the recruitment process. So P&M is a potential new member. That is your student. So your student is going to have a P&M number. That's how we keep everybody straight, especially if folks have similar or same names. But your student is a potential new member, P&M. You're going to hear that one a lot. ROGAMA is a recruitment guide. Think of them like a camp counselor. They will help guide your student through the recruitment process. Every student is going to have at least 2 ROGAMAs assigned to her throughout the week. And throughout the process, she'll interact with a lot more than just those 2 ROGAMAs. So that's pretty fun. Lots of mentorship opportunities there if your student is looking for that. When we talk about parties during recruitment, I know if you're new to this process, you're like, parties? We're not talking about those kind of parties. A party is just an event during recruitment. So we'll take round 1, for example. There are 24 party slots, 24 different events throughout that first round. We have 11 chapters. So your student will visit 11 events, 11 parties during round 1. So a party is just, they line up, they walk in, they talk to people, they leave. Sometimes they're singing, a lot of times they're singing, sometimes there's videos or presentations, but it's not what you might think of as a party colloquially, so don't worry about that. Panhellenic, you're going to hear that word a lot too. That's the governing body that oversees the formal recruitment process. So our team, we are the Panhellenic Association. We're like the umbrella group that oversees all 11 of those organizations. And we, like it says, facilitate the formal recruitment process. And then lastly, maximize your options. It is what it sounds like, utilizing all the options available to you during the recruitment process. So we use the term maximize your options with your students a lot. We think it's helpful if you're also sharing that same kind of language. So when you're talking about recruitment, the best way to go into the recruitment process is to maximize your options. So when you think about that, it just means utilizing every option that's available to you throughout the process. A couple other terms, hall group and tour group. These are the 2 different groupings of how we group P&Ms together during recruitment. So hall groups meet each night. When I say 2 to 3 ROGAMAs are assigned to them, those are kind of their recruitment guides throughout the week. Hall groups are determined by where students live on their hall floors. And if your student is not living in the residence halls this fall, we group those students together as well. So they'll get to meet other commuter students, and we give them a space on campus to meet at. So they'll still do those nightly meetings just like any other student, even if they're not living on campus. And then the second grouping is tour group. They're really only utilized in the first round. We do round 1 kind of by last name. So students will line up on the South Oval, which is the picture in the background. They line up by their tour groups and they walk around to those events together, to those parties together on round one. They also eat meals together that day. So know that your student will be put in two different group me's, a hall group and a tour group. But again, it's just a chance to meet more students, a chance to meet more recruitment guides. And that's just kind of how we structure that process. And then the last term to know is chapter. So a chapter is a local branch of a national sorority organization. Just means that they're like a local group. So every chapter has a different designation, but something good to know, all of our local chapters, they have like national sororities that they are members of as well. So when you join a local chapter, you get the resources and the support of this large national or international organization as well, which is kind of great and good to know. So we'll kind of keep going here. This is a basic overview of formal recruitment. So at its core, it's a 4-round process split over 6 days. We've got a couple rounds that last a couple of days, but we'll get into that. The process at its core is designed to match students to chapters. That is what it is designed to do. It's a mutual selection process, meaning chapters are selecting students and students are selecting chapters. You spend more time at each chapter as the rounds go on. So round 1, they're 25 minutes. Round 4, the last round, they're 60 minutes. So the time you're spending at each chapter gets a little bit longer each day. We're going to go through each round just so you can kind of understand how this process works. And then we'll talk about the matching process as well. So for round 1, it's called open house round. You visit 11 chapters over 2 days. So the students will visit either 5 or 6. There are 12 party slots each day. So you can do the math there. There'll be times where your student has a break, right? But they will stay with those round 1 groups on that first round of recruitment. The events are 25 minutes long and they're led around in groups by recruitment guides. The groups vary in size from about 60 to 70 students. This is a day where they'll wear their Panhellenic t-shirts that are provided to them. So they'll wear white shirts on the first day on August 11th and red shirts on August 12th. And like it says, there is a set lunch break on each day of round 1. So whenever the group has a break, the recruitment guides will lead them over to the cafeteria. They'll eat lunch, have some time to unwind. And we've got some spaces booked kind of along the way. So if a group has a break, between 2 chapters, there's a space inside where they can wait. Because if the weather's anything like it is right now, it's going to be hot. So we'll make sure the students aren't just like standing outside in the heat in that time. So that's round 1. Round 2 is on August 13th. That round is focused on philanthropy. So you might hear people say philanthropy round. This day, students visit a maximum of 8 chapters. So not every student is going to have 8 chapters. We'll talk about some party stats and stats from last year here in just a little bit. But kind of good to know that not every student will have all 8 chapters. Parties are 30 minutes long, and this is where the personalized schedules start. So every morning, the recruitment guide will come to your student's residence hall room and deliver her schedule for that day to her. We print them out. We're a little bit old school, but we like the personal touch. And same thing if your student's living off campus. A lot of times those groups will have all the students meet and they'll pass out the schedules that way so that they can have some conversations if they need to. The students wear their cream Panhellenic shirts that have a bunch of different colors on the chest. Same like the round before, there's a set lunch break. And again, good to know, not every student is going to have a full schedule, but regardless, all students will have breaks. So I think on this day, I think there are 14 party slots. And so if a student can visit a max of 8, they're going to have plenty of downtime during the day to go freshen up, take a break, get inside, drink some water. So know that that's kind of how that works on round 2. Round 3, very similar to round 2. The events are just a little bit longer. So as it starts to whittle down, round 3 is a split over 2 days, August 14th and 15th. The students can visit a maximum of 5 chapters. Parties are 45 minutes long. Like round 2, the recruitment guides will bring the schedule to the students in the morning. And then we also do shirts on this round to hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody. So students will wear their blue Panhellenic shirts on August 14th and their purple ones on the 15th. On this day, there's not like a set lunch break, but students will have breaks around that time. So there's definitely time for them to go grab food between between their events. And then something kind of fun to know on this round, this is when house tours happen. So, they'll take students on a full tour of the chapter facility. They'll get to see what a bedroom looks like, what the dining room looks like, all that kind of stuff. So know that a lot of our chapter houses are older. Most of our chapters have been on campus for well over 100 years. So know that there's going to be some stairs involved. So we've talked to a lot of students who've got various, mobility accommodation needs, but if that's something that your student is going to need, be sure to have them reach out to us so that we can work on that and figure out a plan for them together. And then the last round of recruitment is preference round. You've probably heard it called pref night. A lot of students will call it that. So students visit a maximum of 2 chapters that night, and the events are 60 minutes long. So like the other rounds, they get that personalized schedule. And then we do a training in the morning where we kind of cover the MRABA. We'll talk about what that what that acronym is here in just a minute. But that's like the document that you use to make your final selections. They're actually getting a training very similar to this one. So if there's any students here, you'll hear a lot of the same information from me on the 16th. And then on pref night, there's no set attire, but think about like summer or a cocktail kind of vibe, like a summer wedding. That's what a lot of students wear. But it is a little, it's a lot dressier than like a t-shirt. So, this is a fun time where students can kind of show off their fashion vibes and their personality through that. So those are the rounds of recruitment. And then we get into bid day. Students have the entire day free on bid day until 4 p.m. Bids are distributed at 4 p.m. in the residence halls. Like the previous rounds, the recruitment guide will bring the bid and the t-shirt straight to the student's room. So we don't open them in the stadium. It's a lot more private. And then the students will run home. They are actually running to the chapter house that they are matched with. So the students, as they get their bid, they'll have the t-shirt that the chapter will be wearing. We give them that with their bid, and they get to change and run home to their new sisters, which is super fun. If you're planning to come to bid day, or if you have questions about that, know that we do see a lot of parents at bid day. So if you're like, I kind of want to go, I don't know, you won't be out of place, is what I always tell people. Like, it's not required by any means, especially if you took off work to move the student in. I know that this is on a Sunday, but not everyone lives in Oklahoma, and that is totally fine. So if you want to come to bid day, we'd love to see you there, but know that your student will be busy. And it's not a requirement by any means. So that's a little bit about the process in each round. If you're wondering, okay, how does selections work? How does that piece of the process work? We'll talk through that. So each evening, students will meet with their hall groups to make selections for the next round. They're made like on a computer or a cell phone typically. And we have students and staff that are around to troubleshoot, but they do these selections with their recruitment guides in their small groups. So it's not like they have to come to a large space and do that, as a big group. But this is what the selections will look like. We're going to use this as an example. So this is after round 1 going into round 2. So they've just visited all 11 chapters. And remember, round 2 is a maximum of 8. So they're saying, these are the 8 chapters I most want to go back to. When you make selections, it's called a priority. These are the groups I'm prioritizing. So on the right-hand side here, we can see P&M priorities. There's 11 organizations listed. These are the 8 they most want to go back to above that line. And then the 3 that they're like, if I didn't get invited back, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. The rank order is very important for those, what they would say bottom 3, right? If one of your top 8 doesn't invite you back, but say number 1 does on your bottom list, it's going to populate to fill that spot to give you a full schedule. Like I said at the beginning, the process is built to maximize the student schedule. And it's also a mutual selection process. So the process is always trying to give the students the best opportunity to match at the end. So it's gonna front load the process as well. So, one other thing I was going to mention here, all P&Ms do have to maximize their options on rounds 2 through 4. So when we say that, that means, well, I went to 11 chapters, but I really only liked these 2. I only want to have those 2 back. It doesn't work like that. You have to say, okay, these are the 8 I most want to go back to, ranking the 3 that you would be okay if you didn't go back to. So if we use this as the example, these are the 11 chapters the student attended after round one, round two, a max of 8. So they're saying alpha, zeta, gamma, kappa, omega, upsilon, chi, and omicron are the 8 I most want to go back to. Phi, psi, and eta, you know, if I could pick, I would most want to go back to phi. I'm right. I'm doing that one as number one. So this is what the screen will actually look like. These are just a bunch of random organizations. We don't even have some of these here. But they'll move up from the available regret column. They'll select. So they'll move up. They like drag and drop it on their phone. And then they'll rank the bottom 3, 1, 2, 3. There can be no chapters left in the available/regret column. And again, ranking those bottom 3 is super important. You don't have to rank the top 8. The system reads them all as number 1. So, not a huge deal there, but good to know. So we'll cover all of this with the students, and the recruitment guides will be there to make sure that it's correct. But if we're using that other example that we were looking at, so alpha and zeta invited that PNM back. That's great. They're going to be on their schedule. Same with kappa, upsilon, chi, and omicron. So how the system works, it's reading the students' selections, their priorities, and the chapter's invitation list, and it's matching them up. So there's a very complicated computer process that does all of this. So if you're wondering what I'm doing in the middle of the night, it's matching everybody up. But so if the student is on a chapter's invitation list, there's no ranking by the chapters or any of that in these earlier rounds. It's just these are the people we want to invite back. If the PNM has them above that line, above, for round 2, I want to go back to these 8 the best. If you're above, if the PNM has those in her top priorities and you're on that chapter invitation list, that is a match. You'll be there for round 2. So we can see with this example, that's true for all of these ones with the check mark. But you notice gamma and omega, not a match. So what happens then? Okay, not a match. That's a bummer. Wanted to go back to gamma and omega. They didn't invite me back. Not a huge deal. So then the system looks to the rank order at the bottom. Phi and eta did invite that student back. So they're going to fill up those 2 empty slots above to give that student the fullest schedule possible, to give them the best opportunity to match at the end of the process. So I hope that kind of shows like how this works. I always use myself as an example in this. The chapter that I ended up in at OU, I ranked number 3. They were at the very bottom of my list. The gal that I talked to, I just didn't click with. I didn't really have much else to base it off of. And so I was like, I wouldn't be upset if I didn't get invited back here. Whatever. Enough chapters didn't invite me back from my top 8 that my number 3 at the very bottom ended up back on my schedule. And thank goodness it did, right? I ended up in that organization. So I think that's something good to talk to your students about, is the group that you rank at the very bottom, they might keep popping back up on your schedule. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything bad. It just means they like you. They want to talk to you more. They want to get to know you more. And maybe you just haven't met the right person yet in that chapter to click with them. So, I think that's good conversations to have with your student. You can't ever drop every chapter. It just doesn't work like that. The system is built to help the student and the chapter maximize their options. So again, this is kind of the ending here. If we're going from round 1 to round 2 for this student, on the left here were their original priorities, their original selections. And this is what their schedule ended up being for round 2. Because gamma and omega didn't invite them back, but 2 in their bottom list did, they ended up back on their schedule for round 2. So that same thing happens every night. It happens after round 1, after round 2, and after round 3. So your student will get very used to doing this, and the recruitment guides are there to help them along the way. So again, round 2, you can have a maximum of 8. Round 3 is a maximum of 5, and round 4 is a maximum of 2. And not every student is going to have 8, 5, and 2. I think I had 5 on round 2. That's pretty normal. So we have some stats from last year to show you, to hopefully help folks understand what the numbers actually look like. We think that's pretty important to be transparent about. So we'll definitely share that here in just a bit. And then, okay, we've got all that from rounds 1 through 3. That's how this process works. When we get to the very end of the process on preference round, The process looks a little bit different from there. So right after their last event, students will come to the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center to sign their MRABA. Longest acronym ever. It stands for the Membership Recruitment Acceptance Binding Agreement. Keyword here is binding. Okay. It's a legal document. So this is something like we will tell your students over and over and over. They'll have a staff member check it, make sure it is correct, make sure that they understand their options. But this is something that's really important as you're talking to your student, is making sure that they understand that what they're signing is binding. So after pref night, they go to their parties, they have fun. They're like, okay, I'm ready to do this. They come to the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center, which is where we'll do our orientations and all this stuff. So they'll know where that building is. And they have 3 options that night. They can either maximize their options, and they're guaranteed to match to a chapter. At that point, you are guaranteed a bid if you maximize your options. The earlier rounds, not so much. But again, we'll talk about stats here in a minute. But we're talking about pref night. So if you maximize your options, you're guaranteed a chapter on bid day. If you intentionally single preference one chapter, it's a 50-50 shot. You might match, you might not. That is when you hear stories about people getting dropped on bid day. They intentionally only picked one of their 2 chapters and they didn't match, right? So we'll talk about what that looks like. And their third option is to withdraw from recruitment. They could say, you know what? I played the system. It was fine. I met lots of people. It's just not for me. And that's okay. Maybe they don't, feel comfortable about the financial commitment. I don't know. There's a million reasons why people might withdraw from recruitment, but those are their 3 options: maximize, ISP, or withdraw. Something that is good to know for folks who've been around this process before, maybe they've had other students, or, maybe they were Greek themselves. I only call this out because I think it's important to use the right language. You might have heard intentionally single preference called suicide bidding before, for like the most obvious reasons in the world. We don't use that language. Those 2 things are not the same, right? Sorority is like fun, whatever. So we want to make sure that we're using correct language. So that's something we will always correct the PNMs when they accidentally say the wrong language. But we just want to make sure that we're using correct and helpful language. And so if that's something you could help us with as family members and supporters, that'd be awesome too. So this is how the bid matching process works. It's a little bit hard to explain when it comes to doing it in like real time, but I'm going to do my best. We've got some scenarios and examples that we can kind of talk through. But I think it's kind of helpful just to see, at least at a high level, how this process would work. So again, these are kind of your 4 options when it comes to pref night. So like I said, you can either match, you can be withdrawn, you can leave the process yourself, ISP unmatched, or released. So when we talk about stats about recruitment, these are like the 4 outcomes that you can have. You can match with a chapter, join that chapter at the end of the process. You can withdraw, which means you can self-select out. This happens before final selections. So you would not withdraw on bid day, right? Because you signed a binding agreement. If you match with a chapter on bid day, you're bound to that chapter. So you can't withdraw on bid day. You withdraw earlier in the process. Again, you're self-selecting out. You could be an ISP unmatched, which again means you're only choosing one chapter from your parties that you had on round 4 and you were not matched. That is something that can happen on bid day. Or you could be released. So being released is the word. I mean, it is, when we talk about sorority recruitment, this is the hardest part. It does happen. We'll show some stats here in a little bit, but being released basically means that you're not invited back to any chapters, and it only happens on rounds 2 through 4. So once we get to bid day, there is no such thing as being released. On bid day, you can either be ISP unmatched, matched. That's it. So we'll kind of talk about what these are, just the 4 outcomes of recruitment, kind of good to know as we talk about this bid matching example. So a couple things to know. On this round, chapters are ranking the full list of PNMs that were at their preference round parties. So like I said earlier, in the earlier rounds, it's just a list. It's like, these are the, 250 students we're inviting back to the round 2 or round 3. But on preference night, they're submitting a ranked list, one through however many people were there. And then the ranking matters, right? Every chapter is different in how they rank. You will never know where your student was ranked on that list. Truly, I think that there's probably 3 people who know who was ranked on each chapter's list: myself, the chapter recruitment advisor, and maybe the student leader. But typically, like, that's an advisory thing. So know that, like, you're never going to know where your chapter or your student is on a chapter's list, and that's a good thing, right? Like, we can't control that, and so that's not something you should try to help them like play the system. You just, there's no way to know that. So on this round, again, chapters are submitting a ranked list, and then we are setting what's called as quota. Quota is the same for every chapter. It's real simple. We take the number of those MRABAs, those binding agreements, we take the number of those signed and divide by 11, because we have 11 chapters. So for everyone who's like, oh my gosh, I've heard the size of recruitment this year is huge, you are correct. But that doesn't mean that there's less spots. It just means like the new member classes are going to be larger, right? So we don't determine quota before recruitment starts. It's just who's left at the end divided by 11. Super easy. So we're going to go through this example. This might be a lot, but I think it's good to kind of talk about. People to tell us every year that this is helpful and helping them understand kind of what this looks like. So I'm going to kind of calibrate you for what's on this screen right now. What you're looking at in the grid here on the right is 2 different chapters numbered lists. These are all the folks that were at their chapter on Pref Night. So we're looking at Alpha chapter and Beta chapter. You can see the ranked order here. And as an example, again, this is real high level, right? Alpha has an empty spot on number 8. We're going to say that they only had 7 students that came to their preference event, where Beta had 8. So every chapter is going to have a different number of folks that come to their preference events. They're all inviting back different numbers of people. Again, they're ranking their full list of PNMs. And then Panhellenic sets, our team, we set quota as you know, as we get those signed agreements and we divide by 11, that's how we set quota. So in this real high level, not real example, quota is set at 3. That's this red line right between 3 and 4. And again, I think just really important to note, this is purely an example. The computer system does this much faster than any human being could. And it's happening for 11 chapters for 1,600 students at once. So when I talk about the line shifting a little bit, it's good to visualize how it works, but the computer system is doing this very quickly. So know that that's kind of how that process works. So I hope we feel okay. It's so hard talking and not seeing you. But I hope we feel okay about how, what we're looking at here. And we'll go through a lot of these students as an example. So we're going to look at Visha first. Again, these are the chapters lists on the right. So Visha's obviously awesome. The chapters are both like, we love Visha. We need her in our chapter. She's number 1. So on the left here, we're looking at Visha's preferences. She said, I want to be Alpha first, Beta second. She's maximizing her options, right? At the bottom, it's got what the outcome is for that student. So because she maximized her options, she's guaranteed to match. And she's guaranteed to match with her first preference because she was above the quota line. So as long as you're above that line and that's your first preference, that's a match. The only time it looks to your second preference is if you are below the quota line. So Visha, she's number 1 on both chapters. They both love her, but she prefed Alpha first. So Visha is going to match with Alpha. So she gets crossed off the Beta list. We'll keep moving down the list. Like it says here, kind of good to know, it's a mutual selection process, right? So because she was above the quota line, she's going to match with Alpha. That's great. So as we cross her off the list for Beta, because she didn't match with Beta, the line moves down. So we'll keep going. Naomi is the next one. Naomi is number 2 on both lists. Again, the number doesn't super matter, right? She's above the quota line for both. So it's going to take Naomi's first preference into account, Beta. So she's going to match with Beta because it is a mutual selection process. It doesn't really matter that she's number 2 on both lines. It just matters that she's above the quota line. So she's going to match with Beta. and then the quota line starts to move again. Kelly is next. Kelly is above the quota line for alpha. That's great. We don't really know where she's at on beta's list. I just made a little table here, but Kelly's somewhere below number 8. So obviously not above the quota line. So Kelly, she wants to be a beta. She's not above that quota line, but she is above for alpha. And so the system is going to match her with alpha because she maximized her options. So something good to know on our campus, this number is pretty consistent from year to year. About 85% of students get their first preference on pref night. I don't really know how that it always seems to work out that way though. That number is really consistent over time. It's anywhere between like 82 and 86% on our campus. I think last year it was about 86. So know that a lot of students do get their first preference. But they might end up, your student might end up like Kelly. She maximized her options, so she's going to match, but it's not always with the first option. So just something good to note there. We'll keep moving down the list here. Sam. Sam is my recruitment experience. So Sam is, let's look at Sam. Sam's above the quota line on beta, which is great, but she doesn't have a second preference party. So that's how my experience was. I only had one event on preference. And so it didn't really matter, right? It didn't really matter like what I chose. Even though she has only one option and she still maximized her option, she prefed beta, she's going to match with them regardless. So sometimes when students come in to sign their MRABAs and we see that they only have one chapter listed, we're going to say, hey, how many events did you go to tonight? And if she says she went to one, we do like a happy dance. It's a whole hug moment because you know where you're going to be on bid day. And so we're always really excited for those students because they get to sleep easy on bid night. They don't have to be worrying about what's going to happen the next day. So Sam's going to match with beta. Very exciting for Sam. Daria is the next example. So this is our first person who's not maximizing their options. So we can see what's going to happen with Daria. She preferenced beta first and she left off her second pref. Let's say she went to gamma chapter. Daria is getting really lucky because she is above the quota line. So she's going to match with beta, which is great. I'm happy for Daria. It is a gamble, right? It's a 50-50 shot. If you're above that line, awesome. But there is a chance that you could not be above that line. So Rachel is the example here. Rachel, not quite so lucky. Rachel is below the quota line on beta and she does not match. So this does happen to students. Again, we'll show some stats here in a minute from last year. But if you're below the quota line and you only give yourself one opportunity to match and you don't, that is where you would be an ISP unmatched. You intentionally single preference just one chapter and you did not match. So that's the only time on bid day that you could wake up and not have a bid, right? If you maximize your options and you get to preference round, you are guaranteed a bid. So again, this is the student's decision. Our staff is super intentional about not making this decision for your students. We do have a process in place where, like I said earlier, if a student only has one chapter listed on her card and she comes up to us, we have like a staff member has to sign off on every card. If we see that only one chapter is listed, I train our staff to say, hey, how many events did you go to tonight? Because we can either celebrate with her or say, okay, we just want to make sure you know that you're not guaranteed a bid tomorrow. Just one kind of last check so that they understand I'm making this decision and I'm going to live with this decision, right? For a lot of students, they match and that's great, but there are students who don't match. And so again, we'll share some stats here in a little bit so you can see what that looks like. Only a couple more examples here. Anya is a student who got to pref night. She went to her parties. She came to Jim Thorpe right after her last event and decided, you know what, this was fun, but I want to do something else on campus. Greek life is not my jam. Totally fine, right? We are going to support Anya every step of the way throughout her OU journey. Greek life is not everything. It should not be your personality. It should not be the only thing about you. And Anya just decided she wanted to do something else, and that's totally fine. So Anya is withdrawing from the process. She's self-selecting out. That is kind of the last chance on pref night that you can self-select out of the process. She decides she doesn't want to join a sorority anymore. She withdraws from the process entirely. She's unmatched. And then Hallie. So Hallie is a special one. And I only bring this up because you might hear like, oh, this chapter had more people on bid day than others, or if you're wondering, well, what if you're below the quota line for both? Like, what happens then if you maximized your options and you're saying I'm guaranteed a bid? What happens if I'm below the quota line for both? That's probably the question going through your head. So Hallie is a good example of that. We can see Hallie's below the quota line for alpha and beta. What happens then? She maximized her options, so she's guaranteed a bid. Hallie is what's called a quota addition. So these are people that I'm manually adding the morning of bid day. We do bid matching like the morning of bid day. So the system kind of spits out, okay, these are the people who maximized, but they didn't match. We go in and manually add them. I always try to take into account the PNM's first preference. It's pretty rare that we can't place them with their first preference, but it does happen. So know that that's something we look at. We can't really see names when we do that. It's just PNM numbers. So the student would never know that they were a quota addition. The chapter doesn't know, like none of that, because all of the quota line is moving between 11 organizations. So the chapter's never going to know that. So that's kind of how this is showing how you're still guaranteed a bid, even if you happen to be below the quota line for both organizations that you went to. So as long as you maximize, you're guaranteed a bid on bid day. So hopefully that's easing a little bit of fear for folks and all of this. I know that was something my mom worried about during recruitment. So I'm hoping that this helps with that. Oh no, the lights in my office just went off. Oh no, they're not turning back on. Okay, I might be in the dark. That's embarrassing. Okay, we got this. We got this together. Okay, so kind of a wrap up here. There again, those are those four outcomes of recruitment. You can either be matched, which means you're matched with the chapter at the end of the process. ISP unmatched, you intentionally chose one and were not matched with that chapter. You withdrew, you self-selected out of the process, or you were released, which means you weren't invited back to any chapters, and that can only happen on rounds 2 through 4. So I hope that bid matching example helped kind of show you what that looks like. Sorry, my lights are motion sensor. I was trying to turn them back on, but I think I'm just gonna have to let that be. Thanks for sticking with me. Okay, so we'll kind of keep moving here. I know we're nearing the 45-minute mark. There are 2 different types of recruitment. Formal, that's the one we've been talking about. Again, it's designed to match PNMs and chapters together. The process is built to match the students if possible. It's the only time that all 11 of our chapters recruit, and it's fully structured. We facilitate the process. It is very, very structured. Your student will always know where to be, what time, all that good stuff. So that's one way of joining a Panhellenic sorority. Another way is called informal recruitment, or COB. I think it's good that you know that this option is out there. The formal recruitment process is great, but not every student shines in that space, and that's okay. So know that there is another way to join. It's called the continuous open bidding process, or COB. Don't say COB. That's a little, sometimes people say that and it kind of makes me giggle. So we say COB. But continuous open bidding, it takes place in the fall and the spring, but only about half of the chapters get to recruit. So if you're wanting to, try all 11 out, the only time that all 11 will recruit is during the formal recruitment process. For COB, again, only about half the groups get to recruit, and it's any chapter that's under the median chapter size. So when we say half, that's why we say that. And they can only recruit up to that number. So like some things with formal, like ISP, for example, the continuous open bidding process is kind of a gamble, right? Only about half the groups get to recruit, and it's a total crapshoot on how many spots they're going to have. A chapter might have 2 spots, they might have 50. We don't know. It could depend on how large of a senior class they graduated. If they have people studying abroad, I mean, there's a million. If people are going to nursing school, there's a million reasons why a chapter might be under the median chapter size. And just for context, our median chapter size last fall was 330. So these chapters are really large. So when we say people kind of come and go, right, there's almost 3,500 students in this community. There's going to be some circumstances why people might need to step away for a little bit. But know that that means the number of spots is a total guess, and we won't know that until bid day. Um, the informal recruitment process, or COB, like we've talked about, it's really unstructured. So chapters drive that process entirely. You can put your name in. We have like an interest form online, mostly because we're a large campus. We try to help connect students and chapters together. But even if you fill out the interest form, it's not a guarantee that a chapter is ever going to reach out. So this happens every semester. Students will reach out to our office and say, I filled out the form like 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. We're never going to know the answer to that, right? The chapters make their own decisions. They recruit on their own. They have their own events. And they might have only had one spot and already filled it, right? We just don't know. So informal recruitment is a way to join, but it's less, you're less likely to join through informal recruitment than the formal process. So good to know that it's out there, but I don't want people to like be relying on that, if that makes sense. So, okay, I know I've talked a lot about stats. I promise we're getting to the end here, folks. But I wanted to kind of talk about numbers from last year because I think it helps give people some context, I guess, as to all of the things we've been talking about. So we'll start here. We talked a lot about matched and unmatched. These are some numbers from last year. Of the 1,375 students who started the process last year, 1,102 were matched at the end. That's 80.1%. And 273 were unmatched at the end of the process. That's just under 20%. So again, remember, being unmatched includes being completely released, withdrawing, or ISP unmatching. So if you're wanting to join a sorority, it's a pretty good odds that you can do that during the formal recruitment process. If you're wondering, like, okay, then what's the breakdown of the unmatched? We got you. Don't worry. Again, 273 people were unmatched at the end of the process. I think this stat is really important to know. All but 3% of those 273 had the option to continue in the process, but they chose not to, right? So last year, 9 students were completely released. That's 0.6% of all PNMs. So of those 1,375, 9 did not have the option to move forward in the process because they did not receive any bids. So when I talk about like the possibility of being completely released is there, it is, right? Like I'm never going to say that it's not, because I never want to discount that experience for people, because it's really hard. I mean, putting yourself out there in this process is hard. And I don't have kids. I have a niece, and I can already imagine. I mean, she's 2, like she's a long ways off from this. But I can already imagine, if she decided to do sorority recruitment, I would be thinking, oh my gosh, is she going to be one of those 9 or 10 or whatever? And so I know that that is a stressor for a lot of people. So I don't want to discount that, but know that like it is a really small number, right? So I never say you are guaranteed a bid in the process, because you're not. Your student could be one of those 9, 10, 11, however many students it might be this year. But know that if that is your student, we are going to take care of her, right? We go to her dorm room to tell her. Her recruitment guides follow us there. We are there for her that day, the next day. I do outreach a week, a month, a semester away. Like we check in. And we do a lot of one-on-one time to help that student get connected on campus. Because just because the sorority thing might not be their thing that semester doesn't mean that they're not welcome or that they don't belong here at OU. So know that there is like a huge team of people supporting them. But I think that's important to note. If that's something you're worried about, the possibility is there. I'm never going to say it's not there, but I hope this data helps ease your mind at least a little bit. Again, of those unmatched, the majority of these students who are unmatched are self-selecting out. And again, people withdraw for a million reasons. I decided I can't afford this. I would rather be on the rowing team. I decided I am too nervous about my academics. I don't like the chapters I have left on my list. Like all of those things are valid reasons. We never fault a student for withdrawing from the process. We just want to make sure that she understands what that decision means for her. And so if your student calls you and they're like, they kept talking to me about withdrawing. Why are so many people trying to talk to me about withdrawing? We just want to make sure the student understands, okay, if I withdraw, here's what happens. I'm eligible for COB. I am eligible to go through formal recruitment again, all of those things. And then last year, ISP unmatched. So of those 273 people who were unmatched at the end of recruitment, 53 of them, again, intentionally single preferenced one on bid day and woke up that day with that phone call saying, I'm so sorry you didn't match, which is a really hard phone call. Again, it's not great. But again, I just want to make sure folks understand that's an intentional decision that students are making. So when you hear about like the horror stories of recruitment, this is sorority. It's supposed to be fun, right? I don't know if I believe the language about horror stories. But a lot of times students are deciding for themselves to step away. You know, every year, inevitably, I get a phone call from a parent, well-intentioned. I know it's from a place of love, but every year I get a phone call saying my student was dropped from every chapter. Like what happened? And I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, she had 5 parties left. What do you mean she was dropped from every chapter? And then they say, well, she was dropped from the one she wanted, right? That language is important. So she wasn't dropped from every chapter. She was dropped from the groups that she felt most connected to, which is a fine thing to say and understand. But she wasn't dropped from every chapter. So when you hear about the horror stories of recruitment, I want you to think about like, okay, what good is there in all of this? It's like my mom always told me growing up, you might not want to hang out with people who don't want to hang out with you, and that's okay. I like to think about that during recruitment. Just because a chapter didn't invite you back doesn't necessarily mean they don't like you, right? It's a numbers game. But can you focus your energy on what chapters you do have on your schedule and really give your all to see if you connect with those groups before deciding to withdraw from the process? So just some language I hope is helpful for your students. A couple other stats that I think are helpful to know. Continuous open bidding is becoming a little bit more common than it used to be, back in the day. But like we mentioned, last year there was 211 students who withdrew from recruitment, and a lot of students told us, well, I'll just join through COB. For some people that was true, right? But for a lot of people it wasn't. And so less than 28% of our students who withdrew from recruitment ended up joining through COB throughout the entire academic year. So 28% is like not a crazy bad number. But I think students have this mindset that like, oh, if I'm not happy with my invites during recruitment, I'll just COB. And having that mindset is just not super helpful. Because again, only about 50% of chapters are going to get to recruit, and there's no telling how many spots that they'll have available. So again, we will always support the decision of the student, but it's just important to know the data, important to know the risks. And that's what we're here to do. We're happy to give this information to the students. I think that's our role, is to help the student come to the best decision for her. And then something else good to know, we talked about that interest form earlier. Only about 17% of students who completed that interest form are extended a bid every semester. So filling out that form doesn't guarantee anything, just like the formal recruitment process doesn't guarantee anything. But know that like COB is an option. I just can't tell you how viable that option always is. So hopefully that's good to know. But all of this to say, keeping an open mind is, if you're looking for advice to give your student, this is the only thing I would say. Truly, keep an open mind. Going into the process, thinking about only one chapter, it is unrealistic. There are 11 awesome organizations. And just like we don't like to be put in a box, neither do our chapters, right? But if you're only going in with like, I want to be in these 1 or 2 groups, think about how much you're limiting yourself, right? That's a 1 in 11 chance. Those odds are not great. So keep reminding your student to have that open mind from start to finish. That's one of the best ways that you can support them, because they're calling you before they talk to us, right? And just, I think at the end of the day too, remember that recruitment is supposed to be fun. Like, this process is a blast. It gives you real life decision-making experience in a really safe environment. And it doesn't define their students. Like, it does not define their self-worth. Your student is enough already, right? They don't need the sorority to make them anything better or different than they are. They're already enough. They're already awesome, because of how you've raised them. And so giving them that perspective that these letters on these shirts that they might or might not wear in 5 days, it doesn't define their self-worth. I think the more that they can hear that, the better it is. And we're definitely sharing that language with them as much as we can. So kind of the last piece of stats here that I wanted to share. We got a request for this a couple of years ago, and we've started doing it every year. And I think it's helpful information. So when we talked about not every student having a full party schedule each round, this is what we mean. So if your student wakes up on round 2 thinking, oh, today is a max of 8 chapters, and she has, 6, it is not the end of the world, right? More people have less than 8 chapters than people who do have 8. And I will say, the people who have 8, they're pretty bad. We tell them not to do this, but they be doing this. It's a humble brag. Oh, I'm so tired. I ran from North to South Creek. I'm exhausted. I've been at 8 parties back to back. If you have 4 parties, you don't want to hear that, right? So we try to help the students understand the humble bragging is not a good look. But I hope this breakdown helps you, give you some ammo if your student calls saying, "Oh my God, I don't have the max party of chapters. I got to drop. I don't have 8 parties on round 2." That is okay. More people don't have 8 than people who do. So know that going in. Same thing for round 3. It's a little more of an even split here. But again, 50% of people had full parties, 50% didn't. That is okay. Some people are going to have 5 parties and some people aren't. And that is totally fine. I think the language we use really, really matters. And so we never say, oh, that's a great schedule. Every schedule is a great schedule. If you woke up and you had a schedule, that is a great schedule, because there's probably a student who woke up to a phone call or a knock at her door from Panhellenic saying, "I'm so sorry, you don't have any invitations today," right? So I think having that mindset and helping your students have that perspective is just helpful. So that's why we share these stats, so that you can give them that perspective if they're calling you freaking out. That's totally fine. Preference is a little different, right? Most people do have 2 parties on preference round. I was in the 3.5% that had one. My decision on pref night was super easy. So this is just kind of a breakdown, but I think it's good to note, last year on pref night, there was still 1,260 people left in the process, right? We started with 1,375. So folks will self-select out all throughout the process, again, for a million reasons. There was a girl who came to our office on round 2 last year and decided to transfer to a different university. I was like, it's August 14th. Like, that's wild. But we helped her out and refunded her, and she's all good, right? So like, we're happy to help when those things come up. But that's just kind of good to know that the number of people will dwindle as the process goes on, because some people go to these events and realize this is not their jam, and that's totally fine. So these are kind of just some last thoughts here as we're wrapping up. These are kind of your roles during recruitment, or at least how I like to think of them. You're their sounding board. They're going to call you, like I said, before they call us. And so sometimes they just need you to listen. They don't always need you to do something. And I think it's okay to ask them that, what can I do for you? I think that's something you're always welcome to ask them. You're their support system, their celebrator. You're there to console them when things are hard, and you're our partner and friend. And so that's really my thing is, that's why we do this webinar for parents. We want to give you the tools to help fulfill these roles as a family member, as a supporter. But also, like, we care about your students. We want them to succeed. We want them to have a great time. And no matter how their process works out, that they are going to be rejected at some point in recruitment. Like, I know that sounds really harsh, but it is true. And why wouldn't you want that first time of rejection to be in such a safe space where they have so many people on their team, right? A lot of students, I mean, for some students, where they go to college is really determined by circumstance. For some people, this is the first decision they are making by themselves. And so these are ways that we can support them and help them make that decision, but not make the decision for them. So that's how we function. That's how we try to teach parents and families to function. But know that we're your partner and friend. If your student calls you and you're like, I do not know what to say, I don't know what's going on, I need someone to talk through this with, call our office. That is what we're here for. I am the least judgy person. I will never judge you for calling to ask some questions. You can ask for me. I'm there basically every afternoon into the evening, mainly because I'm there till the middle of the night. So I'm sleeping in a little. But if you call, mid afternoon, early afternoon, and you want to talk to me about some of this stuff, I'm happy to talk with you. Because, we're happy to give you the language, give you the perspective, but also just listen. Like we're happy to do that as well. So these are some ways that you can support your student through the process. Another kind of shameless plug, fun way to support your student is through our vendor process. You've probably been getting messages from them and seeing them in the Facebook group for parents, but if that's a way you want to support your student, is send them a little goodie. These are our vendors that we work with. We will deliver the gifts for them throughout recruitment. So not required by any means. But if that's something you want to do, we're happy to help with that. And we are doing a little pop-up shop on August 10th from 11 to 2 in Cross C. So if you do happen to still be in town and want to come meet some of these folks in person, we'd love for you to do that. So that's another way you can support your students. And again, these are just some kind of like final tips. Listen to their triumphs and frustrations. This process can be really confusing, but it is supposed to be fun and exciting. So know that they might not want you to take any action, but they just want someone to listen to them. And I think it's okay to ask them what they want. Understand that this is their experience. It's a really great learning experience for your students. It's a great low risk time for them to learn and grow in a caring environment. They got a lot of people on their team. And then lastly, be intentional in your conversations. Try to help them come to decisions on their own. And I think this is the best advice I can give you is trust that you've prepared them. Like you have raised them and they've made the decision to come to OU and you've done so much for them. Trust that you've prepared them and taught them to get to where they are to make those tough choices for themselves. I think that's, I hear so many times from parents like, God, this process is so hard for me. I want to help and I want to be there. And that is a way you can do it, is just trusting that you've prepared them and that you can be there to listen as they need someone to listen to them. So at the end of the day, this is our jam in our office. Everything student life does is about belonging. We believe in this idea that you belong here, your students belong here. And so even if sorority isn't for them and they decide this process, was fun, I met some people, but I want to do something else, we are going to help them get connected on campus. And this idea of belonging is just really important to us. So I hope you can tell how much we care about your students and we want them to succeed. And we just know that they're going to have an awesome experience here at OU. So as we wrap, this is our contact information. Our office line is this number. I'll share it in our final email before the process begins, but we move an office line down to our temporary office space in the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center. And you can always reach us at panhellenic@ou.edu. But I hope that this webinar was helpful. I know that this process is new for so many people, and we just want to make sure people have the resources and the tools to have a fun time. Hopefully this gave you some information that maybe you didn't know before. So I am going to open this chat function and see if there's anything that wasn't answered that we need to answer out loud. Let's just see here. Oh my gosh, 41 questions. You can tell I couldn't see these. This is great. Sorry, I'm trying to see if there's any that have not been answered yet.
Hi, Kylie. This might help. I don't
Yeah.
know if you're looking in the Q&A. There's a slot that says answered, and then there's a slot that says open. There's only about 7, and most of them are in regards to the new member fees.
So the open ones are the ones you guys haven't answered yet.
Yes, correct.
Thanks, Angelina.
Of course.
Okay, yeah. So I'll answer some of these ones out loud in the open one. Regarding the financial commitments for a new member living in the residence halls, are they responsible for the $30 per semester fee, the new member fee, and the member out of house fees? So students are only required to pay that Greek fee, that $30 a semester, and then the column that would say new member. So they're really only having to pay that one column in that financial transparency report. The member out of house would be like a junior who's not living in the residence halls anymore. So hopefully that helps. The new member fees, it kind of depends on the chapter how many months they're divided into. Some chapters do 12 months and some do 10. So that's something that I think is helpful to ask about during the process. But something else good to know, on bid day, a lot of chapters will do a parent meeting where they'll talk about a lot of this stuff. So even if you can't be there, a lot of them will do like a Zoom option as well. And sometimes it's not on bid day, sometimes it's a couple days later. But make sure that your student gets you added to their parent communication so you get those messages from the chapter. But typically, for the most part, it is between either 10 or 12 months, that new member fee. Couple of other questions. Does that mean there will be more girls that will not be matched? Not necessarily. Last year, our percentage of students who went unmatched actually decreased from the year before. We had fewer students withdraw from recruitment, which is great. I think, a lot of folks were like, I want to be Greek. I think all of these chapters are awesome. I want to stay in the process. And so, the matched versus unmatched numbers differ a little bit from year to year, but we have seen a trend of fewer people withdrawing and more people matching at the end of the process, which is kind of exciting. I think 2 years ago, our match number was 76%. And this last fall, it was 80.1. So very exciting about that. Did I say if there's a Facebook page for parents of PNMs? There is. I'll have to see if we can drop that link somewhere, but it's also on our website. But we do have a Facebook page where folks can ask questions. We try our best to monitor that all the time, but it's kind of a nice, a space where if you need to connect with other parents too, you can definitely do that. So I think if you search like parent and family Panhellenic recruitment, it should show up. But again, we have on our website, let me see if I can stop sharing this actually. On our website, there is, I'm going to see if I can drop the link actually while I'm trying to do this. Wow. Got a lot of tabs pulled up, y'all. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat. Oh, wait, I can just share this. Okay, wow. Oh, guys, thanks for bearing with me. If you've never run a webinar before, it's very stressful. Okay, so our website, if you go to just pan.ou.edu, it'll look like this. These are our suite chapter presidents. And then this how to join page has probably too much information. But if you scroll down where it says formal recruitment, you can jump to that section. This is where a lot of that stuff lives, but there's a parent and family resources. So the link to the parent Facebook page is there. And then this is where I'll drop this recording under recruitment videos. So you're welcome to go check that out. A couple other questions in here. If they have to move in prior to the 8th, will they need to go to Lloyd Noble on the 8th to register for Panhellenic? We will be at the Lloyd Noble Center on the 7th and the 8th. Your student is going to get an email probably Wednesday of this week with specific check-in information for Panhellenic. It's a little bit different for where they're living. So we'll be sharing that as the time goes. Okay, so answer that one. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of all these. That one's done. The meeting for the students on Saturday, how long is that meeting? There's 3 different rotations. Again, we've been waiting on the housing assignments from the housing office to put everybody in their groups. And we got that at 4:00 today. So we'll be working on that tomorrow. But those welcome meetings are about 2 hours long. So in that orientation meeting, they'll hear kind of a lot of this same information. And then they'll also do their mandated university alcohol and other drug training and their hazing training as well. Again, required for all new students of all Greek organizations, but we kind of bake that into that first orientation so that it's fresh on everybody's mind as the process goes on. That's great. Did you say the payment is monthly or twice a year? Typically monthly. It is very rare that someone could pay that lump sum up front. And so most chapters do a monthly billing. And they can work out payment plans too, where, say a student needs to pay like after a paycheck, like they can work that out with the student one-on-one. But it is typically monthly. This is great. Someone asked, I apologize for joining late. Will the slideshow be sent via email? It'll be on our website. So this page I'm sharing right now, it'll be under this recruitment video. So you can go check it out there. Perfect. Okay, what else? If they are in Headington Hall, oh, gone. Someone might have answered that.
Sorry, that's me. I just answered it.
Thanks, Larson. I'm trying to think of any other ones. Sorry if this has already been asked. Don't apologize. When do the girls get their shirts? This is kind of a secret. Don't tell the students, but the shirt, well, I won't spoil the surprise. The students will get their shirts during the move-in process. And if they're not living on campus, when they come for their mandatory orientation meeting, they'll get their shirts that evening. So that email that they're getting from us, either on Wednesday, hopefully on Wednesday of this week, it'll have them confirm their housing assignment. It'll have them, like, it'll explain the check-in process. And then it'll also explain when they'll get their t-shirts as well. So I know that's been a big question that's been going around there. Great questions, y'all. Thanks, Carrie. Great presentation. Thank you. I'm assuming the girls will get a lot of these details at orientation. They definitely will. We do this online for parents, mostly because that orientation is after the move-in day. And so we know not a lot of folks are still around. So we want to make sure that you guys get the same information. But yeah, they will definitely get a lot of this great information too. Can you clarify where the fees are going, to the Bursar account or external? That's a great question. Only the $30 Greek fee goes to the Bursar at the university. All other sorority fees that are for their international and local dues, those will be through a third party billing system. So when you see that $30 Greek fee show up on their Bursar account in October, that's the only Greek related fee that will show up on the Bursar. Everything else is external. So that's a great question. Okay. I don't know if I totally understand this question. How much more or less is the monetarily financial responsibility? I will say, if I understand this question correctly, the chapters are required to share like accurate, updated financial information. So it should not deviate too much from that financial transparency report. If anything, it might be a little bit less if they over budgeted on some things. But yeah, if that is an issue, you find that it doesn't match that document, that's something you can let us know about. We try to keep track of that so that we can share some better information in the future. But for the most part, that document, I've heard at least over the years that document is pretty accurate. But again, if it's not, that's something you're definitely welcome to reach out to us about so that we can help with that. Let's see. Okay, I see Angelina's answering that one. Oh, this is a great question. We all know there will be drinking at times. What do the sororities do to deal with this and make sure everyone is safe? I love this question because I think, yeah, you're calling out the thing that we all know, but no one wants to say out loud, right? I think something that really is helpful about the Panhellenic experience is there is a very stringent guidelines for chapters. Every chapter has something called a standards board. It's like a judicial board, and nobody wants to go to standards, right? So they set really clear expectations. If you're underage, you should not be drinking in your letters, right? We should not be doing these things. But I think what I care more about is we know students are going to drink, right? The way we train about active bystander support and risk management is really like risk management is sisterhood. You got to look out for your sisters all the time. Never leave someone. Those are things we talk and we train about. And so we try to get really real about those things. but yeah, we try to be super real where we can. Here, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So again, we know students are going to drink, but again, we really try to be upfront about making sure students understand the responsibility that they have to each other, and what joining a sisterhood means is looking out for one another in the good times and the bad. So I hope that kind of helps answer that question. But we train upperclassmen. We do trainings with the new members as well. And then something else that's kind of helpful to know, our office, we do one-on-ones with every organization that's bringing in new members, where we talk about their plans for how they're going to keep their members safe. So we talk through their new member education plan, what kinds of things they have in place for training older members, like, are the big sisters, the bigs, ready to take on a little? What does that mean for that organization? What kind of expectations are in place? How are they looking out for each other? So we definitely talk about a lot of those things. So thanks for asking that question. That's a great question. Okay, one other one that I see is not being answered right now. You may have already said this, but there is a way to get these slides. Yes, they're going to be on our website, pan.ou.edu. On the formal recruitment page, there's a little drop down for parent and family resources, and you can grab those slides there. They'll probably be up tomorrow morning. I might do that tonight, but we'll see if I get there. Great questions. I love it. Any other questions? And feel free, if you've got to go, totally fine. Feel free to drop off. But these are awesome questions from this group. I love it. But again, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Hopefully this was helpful to give you a little bit of baseline information. And again, we'll be sharing a lot of this with your students at their orientation meetings and at their pre-preference meeting on round 4. But we just want to make sure that you guys are equipped as well. A couple other questions that have come in. Following up on the Saturday meeting, we're trying to finalize our travel. When will they find out what time slot they have? Typically that goes up, I don't know the exact date. I think I actually put it on the calendar somewhere, but they should have that information like by mid next week. If your student is living off campus, they will for sure be in the last session that day. But they'll get an email of what session they will be in. Again, we just got the housing assignments 3 hours ago. And so we'll put all the students in their groups tonight and tomorrow morning. And then we'll start deciding. Really, it's dependent on the space. So once I get the students in their groups, then I can figure out how many groups are going to be in each training session, because only about 550 or so people can fit in that training room. So that's kind of what we're waiting on, but we should be able to get that as soon as we can, definitely by mid next week, to you all for trying to finalize some travel. Great questions. Are there formal activities for parents on bid day? Not necessarily. It's a lot of picture taking. Some chapters do host events on bid day. You know, it's like a parent meeting that does happen sometimes, but it's not every chapter. And so if you do decide to come to Norman and celebrate, that's great. Know that your student's probably going to take some pictures, and then they're going to want to go hang out with their new sisters. So don't be slighted if they leave you hanging. But at the least, it's a great time to meet some other parents. Typically there's like a parents club for every chapter. And so if that's something you're interested in, the parents club in my chapter did like finals week study snacks, and they planned some stuff for parents weekend, so there's ways for you to be involved in this experience past the recruitment process, if that's something you're interested in, which is pretty fun. And then I see a question about, will food options be available on campus during move-in, or will a student be responsible for their own meals until recruitment for all begins? That is a great question. We are working. I've got a list from the housing and food folks about what options are going to be available. The students' meal plans start on August 9th. So on the 7th and 8th during the move-in days, they kind of figured that folks would be on their own. But there are options available on campus. So I'm working on getting a list of what's going to be open, and that'll be included in one of these final. We've got 2 newsletters left that will be coming. So know that the food information will be in there. And then something else that I think has come up quite a few times is what about parking passes? I don't think the parking passes say they start till August 15th. We've worked with the parking office and you all don't need to purchase a summer pass. So the regular housing or commuter pass that your student has will work just fine for formal recruitment as long as they park kind of down and either in a housing lot or down if they're a commuter student down by the Jim Thorpe Center. That's where they'll have their night meetings anyway. So they're welcome to park in that lot and they will be just fine. They don't need to buy a summer pass. Oh, this is a great question. When our daughter joins a sorority, are they allowed to eat at the house if they don't currently live there? Typically, yes. The most chapters have 2 meals a week at the chapter house are included in the new member dues. And so every chapter is a little bit different about when they do them. Um, I feel like Monday and Wednesday nights are like a popular one. So students are definitely able to go hang out at the chapter house anytime, but they're typically allowed 2 meals a week there if they don't live in the chapter house. And that's the same throughout all the membership experience. You know, once they're maybe a junior and decide they want to live in an apartment or something, they're always welcome for a couple meals a week back at the chapter house. Relive those fun memories, see their big little family, all that good stuff. It's a great question. And then this question during the year, how do the girls get to the house to have the meals there? They walk mostly. Most of these chapter houses are pretty close to the rest of campus. And so a lot of students will just walk over with their other friends in their member class. I know that's how it was when I was in school and I'm driving around campus now and again and I hate to say like packs of students walking to the Greek housing, but they kind of are. They just walk over there, and it's a great way to meet new folks too. I remember we had a group meet where they would say, "There's a group walking to the chapter at 5:30. If you want to walk, meet us here." And we would all walk together, so that's kind of fun. Those are great questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in. We're happy to help answer them. But yeah, know that there's going to be 2 more emails coming before recruitment starts. One will be about how to check in for recruitment. There is an app that your students need to download to check in. They actually will use it for all kinds of campus events throughout the year. So we're just going to get it downloaded now so that they don't have to worry about it. But if they go to a concert or anything, they can add it to their Apple wallet and they just scan this little personalized QR code. And that's how they check in for everything. So super easy. So we'll get them set up on that. So that email will cover move-in information, checking in for recruitment, t-shirts when they get the shirts. And then the final one will have which orientation session they're assigned to, what their small group number is, and who their recruitment guides are and their phone numbers. So if for some, if they need to get in touch with them or whatever, they'll know who's assigned to their group. And around that time, the recruitment guides will be putting them in their small group me's, which is how they communicate during recruitment. So if your student's added to a random group me, that's what it is. I love it. Okay, well, we haven't had any more questions come in, so we might be wrapping up. But again, all the folks that are still here, just really appreciate your time. And for real, if you need anything or if we can support you at all, give us a shout. We're happy to help. You don't need to think twice about it. We're here to support you too. So let us know what we can do for you. But I hope you guys have a great night and we'll see you in just a few weeks. So exciting. Okay, how do I stop recording? Here we go.